Dave Parody here with another slide makeover video podcast based on the ideas in my book, The Visual Slide Revolution. Today's slide comes to us from a workshop participant who sent it to me as a makeover candidate in a recent workshop. And it's a very good slide to illustrate a particular type of slide we deal with. Let me show you the slide. And what they're doing here is they are presenting the results or talking about a testing or measurement method that they use in this particular environmental example. And very typical, they're talking about how frequently do they do the testing or monitoring, and they've done it as a bullet point. And then they talk about two tests, a vertical profile test and a grab compound sample. Now, the problem here is that one test is shown as a bullet point, then a colon, and then items about that test. The other is shown as a bullet point and then sub-bullets. When you do that, it looks different, and so people assign different hierarchy to these two tests when in fact they are the same hierarchy, they're the same importance. The frequency is also not easy to understand when we just see it written out as a bullet point. So here's what I did with this particular slide. So when we're monitoring to prevent algae bloom and taste and odor event, the key area, the key time frame is between March and October. And so we do bi-weekly monitoring then because that's when it's most common that we're going to have this problem. In the rest of the months, we simply do monthly monitoring. We don't need to do it any more frequently than that. And there's two tests that we do. First is the vertical profile. Now in the vertical profile, we test the pH, the temperature, the DO, the turbidity, and the specific conductance. Now the vertical profile test is important because, whatever the reasons are, the other test that we do is the grab compound sample test. And this we test the taste and odor, the algae species, and the nutrients. Now this is important because, and again, whatever the right thing was. So what we've done here in this slide is made it more visual. Certainly we've got a calendar visual to show the timing or frequency of this monitoring. And then we have made each of the tests separated and given them same hierarchy because they look the same in terms of the visual that we're using. So what are some of the lessons we can learn when we have to explain testing or measurement procedures? First of all, when you're talking about frequency, how often you do this testing, use a calendar diagram instead of simply text. Now in this case, we were talking about over an entire year, so I used a very simple calendar from January to December. If you're doing it a shorter time frame, you might use a monthly calendar to show when during the days, or a weekly calendar if you test it every single week. But use a calendar diagram instead of just simply listing the text. When you are thinking about how to show especially the text, remember that the hierarchy that people understand is based on how you visually show it. So if one is set differently than the other, they assign different hierarchy to those two tests. So remember, if they have the same hierarchy, you want to show them in a similar way. So one of the things that you can do is to put each test in a column. And so each column represents a particular test. This is easy for people to understand because it compartmentalizes, visually compartmentalizes, okay, this test, the title, here's what it does. This test, the title, here's what it does. And they can compare it side by side. So it's easier for them than comparing between bullet points. And then when you're talking about each specific test, as you saw me do in the after slide, build the points about each test. So what is it testing for, or why it's important to be testing for these particular things in what you're explaining. So build it point by point so you can discuss it, as opposed to having all the tests on the slide and then people are trying to figure out what you're trying to explain, or maybe their interest is in something else that's coming up later on. So when you have to explain testing or measurement procedures, keep these lessons in mind when designing your slides. For more information about the book, go to www.visualsliderevolution.com. For more information on my training, my consulting, videos, you can go to my website at www.ThinkOutsideTheSlide.com. This has been Dave Parody with another Slide Makeover video podcast.